بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ ہم اپنے آج کے سیمینار کا باقاعدہ آغاز تلاوت قرآن پاک سے کریں گے۔ میں حافظ علی سے درخواست کروں گا کہ وہ آئیں اور تلاوت قرآن پاک سے اس سیمینار کا باقاعدہ آغاز کریں۔
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها وجعل لكم من الفلك والأنعام ما تركبون.
جزاک اللہ خیر۔ Respectable audience, this is Saibzada Basharat with you, Deputy General Secretary, Pakistan Forum. On behalf of Pakistan Forum, I welcome you tonight in this webinar, Sustainable Energy Future for Pakistan. We also thank Petroleum Club of Pakistan, who has graciously partnered with us tonight and simultaneously airing tonight event from their channel as well. معزز سامعین، ہماری خوش قسمتی ہے کہ ہمارے ڈسٹنگوش گیسٹ پروفیسر ڈاکٹر محمد آصف صاحب، پروفیسر ان انرجی انجینئرنگ، کنگ فہد یونیورسٹی آف پیٹرولیم اینڈ منرلز، دہران، سعودی عربیہ، ہمارے درمیان موجود ہے۔ سر، ہم آپ کو ویلکم کرتے ہیں۔ سب سے پہلے میں پریزیڈنٹ پاکستان فورم جناب یعقوب سیفی صاحب کو دعوت دوں گا کہ وہ مختصراً آج کے اس ویبینار کے حوالے سے اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کریں۔ پریزیڈنٹ پاکستان فورم جناب یعقوب سیفی صاحب۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ آج کے اس ویبینار میں سب سے پہلے محترم ڈاکٹر آصف، پروفیسر کنگ فہد یونیورسٹی آف پیٹرولیم دہران کو، نمائندہ سفیر پاکستان جناب ملک محمد ابوبکر، ویلفیئر اتاشی، اور آپ تمام شرکاء کو خوش آمدید کہتا ہوں۔ میں آپ تمام شرکاء کا ممنون ہوں کہ آپ نے اس اہم قومی مسئلے سے پاکستان فورم کی دعوت کو قبول کیا اور اس میں شریک ہوئے۔ پاکستان فورم ہمیشہ سے کوشش کرتا رہا ہے کہ وہ وطن عزیز میں موجود اور پھر وطن عزیز سے باہر دیگر ممالک میں موجود ہم وطنوں کو پاکستان کے عمومی حالات اور پھر بالخصوص پاکستان کے مخصوص حالات سے متعلق آگاہ کرتا رہے اور ان کو مفید اور مستند معلومات فراہم کرتا رہے۔ اس انداز سے درست اور متوازن تجزیوں کی بنیاد پر بھی پاکستان فورم نے اپنی کمیونٹی کو معاونت فراہم کی ہے تاکہ ان کے اندر انفرادی طور پر ذمہ داریوں کا احساس اور اس کا شعور بیدار ہو اور پھر وہ اپنے ملک کے لیے کچھ نہ کچھ کر سکے۔ ہم پاکستان ملک جو اس وقت بہت سارے مسائل سے دوچار ہے، ملک کے بارے میں ہم بہت زیادہ حساس ہوتے ہیں، اس لحاظ سے کہ ہم ملک سے دور ہیں، اپنے ہم وطنوں سے دور ہیں، اور پھر ہمارا ملک کے جو مسائل کے گرداب سے نکلنے میں ابھی تک کامیاب نہیں ہوا، اور ہر شہری کو روزگار اور عزت اور سلامتی کی گارنٹی ابھی میسر نہیں ہے۔ ملک کے اندر رہنا یقیناً بہت سارے لوگوں کے لیے اس وقت مشکل ہوتا چلا جا رہا ہے۔ ایسے وقت کے اندر پاکستان کے کمیونٹی کے یہ لوگ چاہتے ہیں کہ وہ ملک کے اندر سلامتی کے ساتھ ان کو رہنا نصیب ہو، اور اسی شعور کے ساتھ وہ ہر وقت متفکر رہتے ہیں، اور پھر اسی شعور کے ساتھ وہ دعا گو بھی رہتے ہیں کہ پاکستان ترقی کرے، پاکستان ترقی کی منازل طے کرے۔ آج پاکستان فورم نے اس حوالے سے ایک اہم معاملے کو اٹھایا ہے اور ایک اہم معاملے پر ایک خوبصورت اور بامقصد نشست رکھی ہے۔ اس کی بنیادی ضرورت محسوس کی گئی اس لیے کہ پاکستان کے اندر اس وقت سب سے بڑا مسئلہ اکانومی کا ہے، اور اکانومی کی جو سب سے بڑی بیس ہے وہ اس وقت انرجی ہے۔ کہ پاکستان کے اندر ایک انرجی کرائسس ہے۔ آج اس بات کی ضرورت ہے کہ ملک ترقی کرے اور اس کے ساتھ اس کرائسس کو بھی کور کرے، جس کے بغیر ترقی ناممکن ہے۔ اور اگر میں کہوں کہ ترقی کا پہیہ گھوم نہیں سکتا، ترقی کا تصور محال ہے، اس لیے اس کرائسس کے اسباب اور اس کے متوقع حل اور ہمارے مستقبل پر اس کے اثرات اور اس حوالے سے ہماری ذمہ داریوں اور امکانات کے متعلق آج ہمارے ماہر جناب پروفیسر ڈاکٹر محمد آصف بات کریں گے۔ یقیناً آپ ان کی گفتگو سے مستفیض ہوں گے، ان کی ایک ڈیٹیل گفتگو ہے، ان کا ایک ڈیٹیل تجربہ ہے، سوال و جواب کا موقع بھی دیا جائے گا، اور پھر اس حوالے سے تبادلہ خیال ہوگا، مزید وضاحت بھی آپ ہو جائے گی، تمام پہلو کھل کر سامنے لائے جا سکیں گے۔ میں آخر کے اندر آپ تمام دوستوں کا جو اس وقت موجود ہے ویبینار کے اندر شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں، اور پاکستان فورم کے اس مثبت کردار کو وطن عزیز کی ترقی اور سلامتی کے لیے ہر لمحہ جاری رکھنے کا عزم کرتا ہوں۔ اللہ تعالی ہمارا حامی و ناصر ہو۔ پاکستان، سعودی عرب اور بھائی چارہ زندہ باد، اور اسی انداز سے میں پاکستان آئندہ باد کہتا ہوں۔ آخر دعوانا الحمدللہ رب العالمین۔
بہت بہت شکریہ۔ یہ تھے صدر پاکستان فورم جناب یعقوب سیدی صاحب جو اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کر رہے تھے۔ عزیزان گرامی، آج کے اس ویبینار میں اسلامی جمہوریہ پاکستان کے سفیر ہز ایکسیلنسی راجہ علی اعجاز صاحب کی نمائندگی جناب محمد ابو بکر صاحب جو کہ سوشل ویلفیئر اٹیچی ہے کر رہے ہیں، تو میں ان سے گزارش کروں گا کہ وہ آئیں اور سامعین سے اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کریں۔ سوشل ویلفیئر اٹیچی، ایمبیسی آف پاکستان ریاض، جناب ملک محمد ابو بکر صاحب۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ میں پاکستانی سفارت کی نمائندگی کرتے ہوئے پاکستان کمیونٹی کے اس فعال کردار کی تعریف کرتا ہوں، جس کے تحت ایک اہم ترین مسئلے پر انہوں نے علم و بصیرت سے بھرپور ماہرین اور محبان پاکستان کو ایک پلیٹ فارم پہ جمع کیا ہے، اور سلسلے میں پاکستان فورم کا شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں، اور اس چیز کا بھی شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں کہ مجھے انہوں نے مدعو کیا کہ میں اس موقع پہ اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کر سکوں۔ چاہوں گا انرجی اور سسٹینیبل اسٹیبل ڈیولپمنٹ یہ وقت کی ایک اہم ترین ضرورت ہے۔ ہمیں اپنی آئندہ آنے والی نسلوں کا خیال رکھتے ہوئے اس چیز کو یقینی بنانا ہے، ہماری نسل نے، آپ لوگوں نے، ہم سب نے مل کر، کہ ہم جو وسائل ہیں ان کو صحیح طریقے سے بروئے کار لاتے ہوئے اپنی آئندہ آنے والی نسلوں کے لیے بھی اتنا کچھ چھوڑ کے جائیں کہ وہ بھی آرام سے اور بھرپور اپنی زندگی گزار سکیں۔ تو سسٹینیبل انرجی اس سلسلے کی اہم ترین ضرورت ہے۔ اللہ کے فضل و کرم سے اس وقت پاکستان کی معیشت کا پہیہ بڑی اچھے طریقے سے چل رہا ہے. ہماری انڈسٹری جو ہے وہ اپنی بھرپور صلاحیت کے حساب سے چلنا شروع ہو گئی ہے, اور انڈسٹری کو اسی طرح چلتے رہنے کے لیے اور ہمارے برآمدات میں بہتری لانے کے لیے یہ بہت ضروری ہے کہ ہم انڈسٹری کو چیپ انرجی سولوشنز جو ہیں وہ پرووائڈ کرتے رہیں, تاکہ کمپیٹیٹیولی گلوبل مارکیٹس میں ہم لوگ اور ہماری انڈسٹری جو ہے وہ اوپر آ سکے. تو سسٹینیبل انرجی اس حساب سے بھی بہت ضروری ہے. اس وقت حکومت پاکستان نے ایک رینیویبل انرجی پالیسی بھی دے رکھی ہے, جس کا بیسیکلی مقصد 2025 تک اور پھر آگے 2030 تک تقریباً 40% انرجی کو رینیویبل انرجی سورسز پہ لے کے آنا ہے. یہ ماحولیاتی آلودگی کو کم کرنے میں بھی بہت بھرپور کردار ادا کرے گی, اور اس سے ہماری انرجی کی جو ابھرتی ہوئی ضروریات ہیں اور جو فیوچر کی ضروریات ہیں وہ بھی پوری ہوں گی. اب کچھ بات میں اپنے کمیونٹی ویلفیئر اٹاشی جس کا میرا تعارف کروایا تو اس حوالے سے کہتا چلوں. ابھی ایمبیسی آف پاکستان میں آئے ہوئے 2 مہینے کا وقت ہوا ہے, اور کوشش ہماری ہے اور انشاءاللہ آپ لوگوں کے تعاون سے یہ کوشش میں انشاءاللہ کامیاب ہوں گے کہ جو آپ جیسے وطن عزیز کے جو ہمارے اہم وطن ہیں, جو وطن سے دور ہیں, ان کے مسائل کو ہر ممکن طریقے سے حل کیا جائے اور ان کو بہترین خدمات جس حد تک ہم سے ممکن ہو سکے وہ فراہم کی جائیں, تاکہ جو آپ جیسے اوورسیز پاکستانی ہیں وہ مسائل کے حل کے لیے بھی اپنا عملی کردار ادا کر سکیں, اور پاکستان کی اکانومی میں جو آپ لوگوں کا ایک بھرپور کردار ہے اس کو بھی بہت اچھے طریقے سے سر انجام دے سکیں. ہماری ایمبیسی اور ہماری جو ویلفیئر ٹیم ہے یہ ہمارے سفیر صاحب اور محترم سفیر اور باقی ایمبیسی کے جو ہمارے آفیسرز ہیں ان کے قیادت میں اور ان کے تعاون میں وطن عزیز کے مفادات کے تحفظ کے لیے ہر وقت کوشاں ہے. اور مجھے خوشی ہے کہ آپ جیسے مخلص باصلاحیت اور منظم کمیونٹی کے ممبران کی معاونت جس کی ہمیں ہمیشہ ضرورت رہتی ہے وہ ہمیں ہر وقت دستیاب بھی رہتی ہے. سعودی عرب میں جو تقریباً 26 لاکھ پاکستانی مقیم ہیں وہ سب پاکستان کے نمائندہ ہیں. مجھے اچھی طرح اس بات کا علم ہے کہ پاکستان فورم کا بنیادی جو سلوگن ہے وہ یہی ہے کہ ہر پاکستانی یہاں پہ پاکستان کا ایمبیسڈر ہے, پاکستان کا نمائندہ ہے, اور ہم سب کو مل کر وطن عزیز کو مسائل سے نکالنے اور ترقی کی شاہراہ پر آگے بڑھانے کے لیے کوشش کو جاری رکھنا ہے. اللہ کا بڑا فضل ہے کہ ابھی حالات ہمارے بہت بہتر ہوتے جا رہے ہیں اور بتدریج ان میں بہتری آ رہی ہے, اور انشاءاللہ ایکڈیمیا اور آپ جیسے جو اسکالرز ہیں ان کی معاونت سے اور ان کی تعاون سے اس میں مزید بہتری اور مزید اس ترقی میں مزید تیزی آئے گی. اس موقع پہ میں سعودی گورنمنٹ کا بھی مشکور ہوں کہ انہوں نے 26 لاکھ پاکستانیوں کو یہاں پہ روزگار کے مواقع فراہم کر رکھے ہیں, اور بڑے باعزت طریقے سے یہاں پہ ہمارے پاکستانی بہن بھائی اپنا روزگار کما رہے ہیں. اور اس وجہ سے پاکستان اور سعودی عرب کے درمیان جو رشتہ ہے وہ مزید مضبوط بھی ہو چکا ہے, اور انشاءاللہ آگے بھی اس میں مزید بہتری آئے گی اور اس رشتے کو مزید مضبوط سے مضبوط تر ہم ہوتا دیکھیں گے. میں ایک دفعہ پھر تمام منتظمین اور خاص طور پر پاکستان فورم کا شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں जिन्होंने मुझे इस मौके पे मदऊ किया और मुझे अपने ख्यालात के इज़हार का मौका दिया। मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आज जो प्रेजेंटेशन है अभी सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी के मौजू पे, इससे हमें बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा और इंशाल्लाह इन जो भी सजेशंस हमारे सामने आएंगी और जो भी प्रपोजल सामने आएंगी उन पर अमल करते हुए इंशाल्लाह हम जो तरक्की का ख्वाब देख रहे हैं उसको पूरा कर पाएंगे। आप सबका बेहद शुक्रिया। पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद।
आपका भी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया मलिक अबू बकर साहब। ये थे मलिक मोहम्मद अबू बकर साहब, सोशल वेलफेयर अटैची एम्बेसी ऑफ पाकिस्तान रियाद, जो कि एम्बेसी ऑफ पाकिस्तान रियाद की नुमाइंदगी कर रहे थे। मुअज़्ज़ज़ सामीन, प्रेजेंटेशन के अख्तिताम पर क्वेश्चन आंसर का सेशन होगा, सो प्लीज स्क्रेच डाउन योर क्वेश्चंस फॉर आवर गेस्ट टुनाइट। नाउ let me invite our respected guest, Professor Dr. Muhammad Asif, Professor at King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. His areas of expertise include renewable energy, energy management, energy policy, and sustainable building. He has authored over 100 research papers and 4 books, including Energy Crisis in Pakistan, Origins, Challenges, and Sustainable Solution, published by Oxford University Press in 2011. He also writes for Dawn, Express Tribune, and The News. Professor Dr. Muhammad Asif Saab, please briefly walk us through is what you have for our participants tonight. Professor Dr. Muhammad Asif Saab.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected audience, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be part of this event and to share my understanding on this important topic, which has mortgaged our country for the last 15 years. And the energy crisis in Pakistan and sustainable energy future for Pakistan is such a rich and involved topic. It has technological, economic, policy, social, geopolitical dimensions, which need detailed discussions in themselves. However, given the time, I would like to take you through with a comprehensive bird's eye view about the energy crisis, what is the anatomy of the crisis, what is the a kind of root cause analysis, dimension of the crisis, the stakeholders' role in the energy crisis, and then what is the way forward to move towards a sustainable energy future. So if I can take you through the, just give me a second. I hope you can see the slides now. Okay, the outline of the presentation, the key areas I would like to cover are, first of all, the energy scenario of Pakistan in terms of energy mix, where we stand regionally and internationally. Then we shall look at the status of the energy crisis. What is the present state of affairs? Then we shall look at what is the price that we have paid or we are still paying for this energy crisis, and what is the response that we have come up with for the energy crisis. We shall also look at the role of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders, and what contribution they have made in resolving the issue. And finally, briefly, we shall look through what is a roadmap, a potential roadmap for a sustainable energy future for Pakistan. But before I go into the topic itself, a few words about energy. Let's appreciate that energy is the lifeline of the modern economies, of the modern societies. And all our activities, including household, domestic sector, industry, transportation, agriculture, health and care, they are becoming increasingly dependent upon extensive and refined use of energy. And per capita energy consumption is used by United Nations as an index to determine the socioeconomic prosperity or human development index in societies. And for over 100 years now, energy plays a pivotal role in the global geopolitics. And energy security is the cornerstone of national and international development frameworks. And what we really mean by energy security, it should have 4 dimensions for a society to be secure in energy. First of all, there should be access to energy. Energy should be adequately available. It should be affordable, and it should be acceptable in terms of the resources that are being consumed and the way it is being consumed. Now let's come to the topic itself. A quick overview of Pakistan's power sector. Currently, lion's share of our installed capacity goes to thermal power. 65% of the total generation capacity is thermal. And then we have hydropower, 25%, and then nuclear and solar and wind. In terms of generation mix, the energy produced from these power plants, the major share goes to gas, followed by hydropower, 29%, 35% to gas, and then we have coal. Out of nowhere, 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, coal was nowhere, and now it is 19% of the total generation mix. And here's the growth we see. The energy crisis started in 2006, and in last 14 years, we have doubled the installed capacity. From about 18,000 megawatt, now we are standing at 38,000 megawatt. Given that, where do we stand as a nation? I'm not comparing with the developed countries. It's just the regional countries, South Asian countries, and Pakistan is least in terms of access to electricity. Only 70% of our population, 71% has access to electricity. And in terms of per capita electricity consumption, again, we have Sri Lanka, Maldives, India, and even Bhutan well ahead of us. And if we look at the energy prices, which define energy affordability, and actually the reliability of the energy sector, it's a recent report, 2019, and they compared 140 countries, and they found that Pakistan has an overall standing of 111 in terms of access to electricity, and the quality of supply is, we are standing at a position of 99 out of 140 countries. which is not quite an encouraging position to be in. Now, with that quick overview of our energy sector, let's come to one of the main questions in this discussion. Is the energy crisis over? Well, the energy crisis started in 2006 in the form of electricity load shedding. And we have seen 3 governments since then, and every government has claimed to have finished this problem. And as I said previously, the installed capacity has doubled over this period. So, is the load shedding over? Well, these are the scenes I have recorded in my book published in 2011, and these scenes are reported from press in 2008. These are the protests on power load shedding. And this is my book which has recorded these scenes. And what is this? This is year 2020. Again, we are seeing electricity load shedding and protests over the problem. And now, here we go. This is 2009. Again, a scene from my book. And these are the long queues on the petrol pumps because petrol is not available. And what about this? This is only this summer, during the midst of the COVID, and long queues, and people had to wait for hours and hours and sometimes for days to get a few pints of few liters of petrol. And here we go, losses. We see the losses are increasing. For example, look at PESCO from 33% in 2014, it is 38% now. If you look at HESCO, second from the bottom, from 26%, it has jumped to almost 30%. And rest assured, these losses are well underreported. Actual losses are much more than that. And these are the prices, electricity prices in the region. And again, we are the most expensive, at least from these 3 comparing countries, India and Bangladesh. And here is circular debt, a new giant of an issue in our energy complexities. It was nowhere in 2006, and now we have a circular debt of 2,200 billion rupees in our power sector alone. So, I wonder if we have any other option but to conclude that the energy crisis is still raging. Yes, it keeps on changing its dimensions and intensity. And as a matter of fact, since 2006, when we started with only power load shedding, now we have so many problems in the catalog. We still have gas load shedding, and right now in the winter, people are without gas, in shivering cold, they cannot cook, they cannot heat themselves. Petrol prices we just saw a few months ago. Look at the energy prices, look at the circular debt, look at the whole state of affairs. Now, let's have a look at what are really the dimensions of energy crisis. Is it just load shedding of electricity and gas? This is apparently what load shed of what energy crisis is meant to be, or we are at least told as a layman. This is our common understanding. Okay, we can say we have petrol shortages, we may include as well as a dimension of energy crisis. How about the huge transmission and distribution losses? And what about the unaffordable energy prices, which are skyrocketing, which are increasing? I think the recent most hike has been last week. And what about the growing import dependency? Almost 80% of our petroleum products are imported. And hydropower. In 1960s, 60% of our electricity used to come from hydropower, which was our own internal indigenous renewable resource, and now it is only 29%. And mounting circular debt, I have just shown you, 2,200 billion rupees. And not to forget intensifying environmental challenges, which is not really the topic of our discussion today. But there is something else, which is the mother of all evil, which is the root cause of all problems. And I will hold on to it for a moment. I will come back to it later on. Very quickly, because I mentioned about environmental issues, this is global map of particulate matter 2.5, which is one of the finest pollution particle that can even pass through most of the masks that we use. And you can see Pakistan, one of the red, in the red zone, and 4 of the top 10 most polluted cities in the world, they are from Pakistan. 4 of the top 10 most polluted cities. And I'm not going to go into the melting of the glaciers and the unavailability of freshwater reserves and the other emissions in the groundwater and in the air, smoke, deforestation. It in itself is a huge topic, which is unfortunately not the topic of our interest today. Now let's have a look at how much is this energy crisis costing the nation. Any guess? Yes, we are paying high bills. Petrol has become expensive, electricity has become expensive, gas has become expensive, but is it so? Well, it has dented the whole social economic fabric of the society, which unfortunately has not been addressed much at any level. You see, nowadays, our whole interaction, engagement with the people, our business commitments, they are all to do with what are the load shedding hours. When is gas going to be available? Is petrol available for me to travel? These are just small examples. Luckily, we have passed by those days when people had to spend whole night because of load shedding. And as a matter of fact, it still happens in many parts of the country. Maybe not in the urban population that commonly. And it was a nightmare for students, for bread earners who could not sleep at night in 40, 50 degrees Celsius, and in the morning they have to go without breakfast, without a sleep, without getting ready. Luckily, those days have probably gone by to a certain extent. But let's look at how much it has cost to the nation at the macro level. Well, there are leaks and losses. They're still rampant over the entire supply cycle, over the entire energy equation, from the fuel supply, generation, transmission, distribution, and consumption. And can anybody guess how much it would be costing to Pakistan? Just think about it in your mind. You don't have to, unless, unfortunately, we don't have a physical setting where I could engage you in a discussion, but I just want you to think about it. Millions, few hundred millions, a billion? Well, a recent report from World Bank, which has been acknowledged by the government of Pakistan, not challenged, but acknowledged, the distortions in the power sector alone cost us 7% of the GDP, $18 billion per year. And I hope as a Pakistani, we know that how much we have struggled for $1 billion or $2 billion with the IMF and so on. And how much it is costing us per year? $18 billion. Does anybody care about it? आपने कभी सुना था इसका? किसी ने बताया आपको? किसी टॉक शो में? किसी आर्टिकल में? And gas transmission and distribution losses have doubled in last 10 years, from 6-7% to 14%. So if we consider the whole energy sector, not just the power sector, it is costing us well over $25 billion per year. Isn't it mind-blowing? I hope so. Now let's have a look at the role of stakeholders. Now this is something, unfortunately, which has not been much discussed upon. Or I would say, all we see is political point scoring in talk shows and in opinionated media writings. We just see politicians sharing the blame over each other. But actually, it's time we sit down as a society, as a nation, and we do some serious soul searching. It's not just a politician. Yes, they are at the helm of the affairs. They are in the driving seat. The ultimate responsibility rests on them, but there are other stakeholders as well. Who are they? Obviously, policy and decision makers. Then energy institutions, ministries, departments, regulators, then energy companies. We have industry and business community. We have academia, and I represent this clan. We have civil society, and we have consumer and common man. Now, all of them, unfortunately, they have question marks. How they have responded to the energy crisis. All of them have played a role, not a constructive role, a negative role in exaggerating our energy problems. Well, policy and decision makers and the energy institutions, they are at the helm of the affairs. The eventual responsibility, as they say, the bucket stops with them. And then obviously they operate in coordination with energy companies. So these three elements, they have to be at the front line when we are looking at the role of stakeholders. And I shall try to go through very quickly through the role of these stakeholders. But before that, I would appreciate if we can keep aside our political sensitivities for a moment. I think energy, like education and economy, is one of those subjects where we need a national consensus. We should rise above our biases and affiliations, and we should reflect, and we should engage, and we should try to look forward in a cohesive manner. And I would like to give you an example. This is the book launch of ceremony of my book. And now you see here, I invited politicians from all major parties. You see here, Mushahid Hussain, Senator, he was representing Q League at that time. Khaja Asif from EMLN was invited. Unfortunately, he could not come because of a family death. And then Khurram Dasgir is sitting there. Dr. Samam Workman, he was pioneering some of the energy initiatives at the point. Then obviously the current Prime Minister was also invited. He could not make it at the last hour. And one of the favorite and most respectable energy official, Shamsul Mulk, so he is giving his talk. Now, it is not just this setting that have invited. If you look at here, there were diplomats, there were vice chancellors, there were senior media figures, and there were people from what we call typical establishment and so on. So I tried to bring everybody under one roof to engage in a constructive discussion, hoping that the debate will continue and will lead us to some positive outcomes. And I expect a similar kind of appreciation from you over the next few slides. So What our policy and decision makers, or in other words, our governments have done over this period to handle the crisis, they have only reacted to the situation. There has been no preparation, no proactive approach, and ad hocism. We don't have sustainability in our policy, in our decision, in our projects, and even now in the worst situation, and throughout actually over the last many years, even some of the most important and sensitive positions were without permanent appointments. And they were doled away to people in the system to look at them in part-time. So that was our seriousness. There is no integrated energy roadmap. There has been a lack of cohesive policy framework. There has been a serious issue of inter-stakeholder coordination. And virtually there is none. And all we have done are showcase projects which can earn us political miles. And as a result of that, we have gone about extremely expensive and mostly underutilized energy projects, which had no value engineering. And another serious issue which you would not hear is erosion of capacity. It's not about the installed capacity or capacity of the power projects. It's an issue much more serious than that. It is an issue which is plaguing us as society, as system, as nation. It is the deficit of our competence at certain levels. It is a deficit of our commitment. It is a deficit of our integrity. It is the deficit of our confidence to move forward as a nation, as a society. And transparency and vested interests. I would not say anything about it just now. I would let you to conclude from the following slides. Circular debt, it has absolutely changed our energy system. It has handicapped our energy system. And this is a report by the USAID and Planning Commission of Pakistan. You can see the logos for both. See what does it say? Poor governance is at the heart of the issue of circular debt. Governance needs to improve at all levels, government, corporate, and regulatory. Now, this is a report which came this year, and probably this was the first report into what's really going on, what's wrong with our energy sector. It's a report on the power sector in March 2020. And when our respectable president, Arif Alvi, had a chance to look through the only executive summary, which states that, in energy projects, typically there's a return on investment or equity of 15 to 20%. This is how businessmen go. This is how projects go. But what we see here, with some of the projects, the average annual return on equity is as high as 87%. Can you imagine that anywhere in the world? And look at the other projects, the coal power projects. One of the coal power projects recovered 71% of the investment within first 2 years of operation. 43% of return on investment. What's really going on? And that's what puzzled. And you see here, a recent Senate committee concluded the IPPs, they have gone about undue profit of 2,000 billion rupees. These are not my statements. These are the statements from the Senate of Pakistan. And when our president had a chance to look at through, see what he says. I am just underlining the words. Mafias allowed. Who allowed them? What does he really mean by allow? Is it you, me, the audience sitting here? Who allowed the mafias? And see the term that he used. It was shocking. It shocked him, and the way he expressed it shocked the whole country, the whole society. But probably these were the best words he could express the disappointment. And then he is the chief executive. He is the highest office bearer in the country. We expect some follow-up, some action when he is making such a judgment. And then no action, as usual. And I was personally shocked because I have informed the current government's highest ranks personally. A piece of my communication with Mr. JKT, Jahangir Khan, who was leading the think tank prior to 2013 election. When I was asked to help them with their energy policy, and see who is this gentleman, let me magnify it. Looks a familiar face. He is the president of Pakistan, who says he is flattered that I have agreed to help them for Pakistan. So these revelations in the executive summary of the report, they should not have been a surprise. These issues, these challenges, they were writing on a wall, and I personally informed them about these many years back. And then, who is this gentleman? He was the flag bearer of transparency. And in the People's Party government, most of his time used to be spent in Supreme Court of Pakistan because he was waiting to become an energy minister himself against rental power plants. And look what he says while he was the minister himself. He calls the IPPs, same which our president described in previous slide. He says, in my opinion, and I don't want to use the word, but it is a highway robbery. And then what? Minister, no action, as usual. So what's point in making these kind of judgments? And then actually our president also asked for audit in the energy sector in the same interview. And I was lost of words. I have been asking for audit in the energy sector for last 10 years in my book. And recently, I have written extensively in media. This is my article from 2018 in Dawn, in Tribune. And then again, energy sector audit by the caretakers. I thought they are in an independent position. So if they do a forensic energy audit, probably it should be accepted across the board. And then when the current government came into power, I reminded them of their promises, but no action. And now there is another report last month on the petrol crisis. And what does it say? I'll share just one slide from that report. It says the director of oil, who takes care of the oil and gas in the country, He is a veterinary doctor with no experience in his field, and his appointment is in gross violation of the Ministry of Energy's regulations. Well, don't be shocked. There's more to come. Here's the guy who was the managing director of OGDC, the backbone, one of the backbones of energy sector. And who was he? I hope you can remember this figure. This is just one of the scandals embroiling him. Now you can see the highest office bearers of the country there under clouds. So this gentleman was appointed by our former Prime Minister, and his qualification is only metric. So if this is happening while the country is going through a dreadful energy crisis, we should be lost of words. And I have been writing about this. This is my article from 2007, from the very beginning of the energy crisis. I pinpointed who caused the energy crisis. It's in dawn. And then incapacitation in the energy sector, as I said previously, this is a serious issue. And let me take you back to a laughing stock, an event which made the country a laughing stock. I was in UK at that time, and it was so shameful for us as Pakistanis to face people who knew anything about engineering, about science, forget about energy. Remember this gentleman who said he would run cars on water perpetually, no requirement of energy whatsoever, and he was even claiming he will produce more energy than he would take in the battery in first place. So basically he demolished all the laws of science and physics, and he was endorsed. There were 3 cabinet sessions in which his accomplishments and achievements were discussed, and it was promised to give him resources. And look at the senior minister, and look at the gentleman from the other side of the political club. And it was not just politicians, unfortunately. They were media figures, they were scientific figures, they were engineering bodies, professional bodies who endorsed him. Only a month later to discover his background, his criminal background. But at least for 1 full month, this gentleman, he had basically been the talk of the town. You name any prime time talk show, he appeared on multiple times, and there would not be any channel on which he did not do that. Luckily, there were some sane voices that challenged him, though they had to face ridicule. Now, this gentleman, I think he did a great job by exposing the crisis of capacity that we have in our system. This kind of gentleman, a con man, he can just walk in to our cabinet, to our top professional bodies, our scientific bodies, and he can convince them of something which is just not possible. And then when it is vested interests, as highlighted by our president and former energy minister, I have just given you 2 examples. Otherwise, there can be a catalog of issues, examples, and evidences that can be compiled. But now, when vested interests, they combine with incapacity, it's a lethal combination and a perfect recipe of disaster. And some of the sample projects, as a result of this lethal combination, we have tried to overcome the energy crisis. Nandipur Power Project, Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park, Sahiwal Coal Power Project, and rental power projects, and they all have serious question marks against their technical and economic viability. Nandipur Power Project, see what it says. Nandipur Power Project, a model of unprecedented corruption, incompetence, and mismanagement. And then Don says more than 80 billion in irregularities detected in Nandipur Power Project. Now, as I said, I have gone through this this whole experience of Pakistan's energy sector over the last 20 years. It's not just President Alvi that I've shown you example of my interaction with them. I have interacted with our former Prime Minister, who is sitting in London now. I have interacted with several of the energy ministers, with the governors, with the chief ministers, a former president who is the father figure of another political party. I have interacted with all these people personally, directly, as well as indirectly. And this Nandipur Power Project, those people who prepared the PC1, I have closely discussed with them the fate of the affairs. Now, solar projects, you see, can you recognize? It was supposed to be a solar street light. Look at that. Now, on first place, to have solar street lights on highways, it doesn't make sense. Who is going to clean them? And within 1 month, given the environmental condition that we have, the smoke, the pollution, within 1 month, the efficiency of these projects will be down to 50%. And then within a few months, they should be down to 20 or 30%. But these projects are supposed to last for 25 years. And I go through 5 of these lengths of projects on my way from Lahore airport in 5 different places. And I can count, there are easily about 100 of these street lights. And if I was to install them from my own pocket, when these were installed, it may have cost me maybe 1 lakh. And you know, when it comes to public money, how much it goes. Now, 90% of these street lights, they stopped working within first 6 months. And now, none of them is working. And there are almost 1,000 street lights. None of them is working. This is actually what we do with our projects, but it was a showcase. There was a lot of political mileage and point scoring and snapshots. Now, let me also take you through Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park. There was so much hype. We are going to develop the largest solar farm in the world, 1,000 megawatt. And when we did not have an experience of even 1 megawatt of solar project. And it was destined to be a failure. We don't know yet what is the levelized cost of its electricity. And the tariff that was offered was 3 times the market. And it could be the worst site we could select in Pakistan in terms of temperature, dust, and grid connectivity. And the technical director, why I'm saying, I have been writing about it. I have communicated to the concern from the very beginning. The technical director on this project, he still regards me his mentor on solar energy. I have a very close personal interaction with this state of affairs. And now, unfortunately, I'm an energy engineer, but I have not been able to go into the technological sides. But just in case, just one small thing, you see here, this is the data which has now been removed from the website, 2 years data. And this is the summer months, most prolific time for solar PV. And as a matter of fact, we see the production is low compared to other months. That's why I told you this was one of the worst site we could pick. Now, unfortunately, this data has been removed. You cannot access it. And this is the evidence. Reuters says how much tariff we were offering. And I wrote extensively. These are my articles from 2014, 16, 17. And all our attention was on capacity addition, ignoring transmission and distribution. This is the State of Industry Report 2020. It says we don't have transmission and distribution system on many places to transmit the expensive projects generation. And rental power projects heavily underutilized. Erroneous power purchase agreements, high tariff and toxic fuel mix. And Transparency International has done a lot of work on these rental power projects. And this is Carke. Without giving us a single unit, they were charging us $1.2 billion. Luckily, we survived. And now, my respected audience, I'm going to show you something, and I want you to decide the heading for this slide. This is another former prime minister, charged in he was framed. Charges were framed in Saival rental power project and obviously in many others. And he was acquitted. And the NAB said, we want to go after him in appeal. And if you remember this gentleman, he was an official who was investigating. And you know what happened? We were told he committed suicide. His NAB official said, no, he cannot do that. His family says there was torture on his body. Now you see, what was the label that President Alvi gave to people? Mafias allowed to do what? You know that. I don't know what to give a title to this slide, to be honest. And then who pays the price? This figure on the left top is from my book. A person died when he died of heart attack when he saw his energy bill. And this is 2018, the poor daughter of Habib Jalib, for his 2.5 marla, 75,000 rupees per month. And then in industry and business community, unfortunately, they have not lived the expectation. Academia, which is my own clan, I have written extensively on their deficiencies and the lack of contribution they have made. And we can do a lot. These are, for example, my books on the energy issues. And these are not my scientific books, which are destined to go into the universities. These are also for the consumption of common man. Otherwise, I would not show you my scientific contributions here. And the book on the left, it is my latest book, published only last month. It has 7 forewords. 2 of them are Nobel laureates. 3 of them are serving ministers from the South Asian countries, because the book is on South Asia, and 2 are former ministers. This is what we can do. We can do a lot if we really want to do. And I have 100+ media articles, and I have been given wake-up calls on all these issues for the last 15 years. And what we are doing as a nation, step backward. The world is moving to a sustainable energy transition, which I describe in 4 dimensions: decarbonization, decreased use, distribution, generation, and digitalization. And as a matter of fact, this is the title of my upcoming book, Before the Energy Transition, to be published by Wiley later this year. And what we are doing against that, the world is moving away from coal and oil, and we are going into coal. 10 years ago, we did not have anything to do with coal, and now 29%. And you see the future projects, 26 plus 4, 30% of the projects are on coal, and then LNG and then oil. And recently I saw Denmark last week, They have banned the exploration of oil and gas, which is far better than coal. So the world is moving in the east, and we are trying to go in the west. And what is that? Do you sense any incapacity in our understanding of the issues, challenges, policy, and decision making? So, what are the solutions way forward? Well, before that, let me give you a recap. We have ad hocism, we have a reactive modus operandi, we have volatile policies, we have serious capacity issues at institution levels, in the policy and decision making level, in the execution level, in the departments, and we work on project oriented approach, not on a goal. And the private sector, unfortunately, has not done anything. They have only installed IPPs, and they have only installed where there is money. Regulations have failed, their showcase projects, and their serious financial and administrative irregularities. So what we can do for sustainable energy outlook, short term, we have to revisit power purchase agreements with the IPPs. What our president was saying. We have to stop doing that. The allowance that we have to bring them. And we have to control losses. How can you survive when 25% of your energy goes unaccounted for? And then in the medium to long term, we have to revamp our whole energy administration and management in terms of personnel, in terms of institutions, policies, and market structure. We have to bring in energy conservation and management as a mandatory measure. We have to come up with strict guidelines, regulations, and standards. And we have to incorporate demand side management. We have completely ignored. We have to improve our energy generation mix, and we have to enhance the indigenous supplies, hydropower, solar and wind, and local oil and gas exploration, which we have ignored for ages. But will any of these solutions work? Well, I would let you decide. These are the findings from the Petroleum Inquiry Report last month. And I will just look at the terms that have been used in terms of laws, legal ambiguities, unjustified delays. In terms of Ministry of Energy, you look at the flaws, fights between different stakeholders, no coordination, controversial decisions, controversial holdings, inaction, intrusive involvement by energy companies, appointments of non-professionals. I give you an example of Adnan Khaja, and in this report they have said that, veterinary doctor. And then OGRA, the regulator, the watchdog, look what OGRA is doing. Unlawful operations, unlawful joint ventures, non-adherence, silence of OGRA on wrongdoings, illegal provisions, illegal growth. I wonder what else you could have said to OGRA within limits. And what they say, punitive departmental actions, but everybody is there. And then look at that. They say you terminate OGRA, does not deserve to exist. And this inquiry was about OGRA. And rest assured, if there is a similar inquiry about any ministry, any government department, the conclusions would not be any different. I'm not going into refineries or oil marketing companies because of the time, but OGRA is our watchdog, which is supposed to protect national interest, your, mine interest, which is supposed to protect the nation and the society. And they were partner in this crime. So will any of these solutions work? Well, mafias, as defined by President Alvi, are still busy in what he labeled what they are doing. I cannot utter those words. And highway robbery, as termed by Khaja Asif, is still in full swing. Conflict of interest is still alive at the highest possible levels. As of 2020, leaks and losses are still rampant, and compromised decisions are still being made. So, if there has to be any light at the end of the tunnel, this is the success triangle. Merit, capacity, not in terms of power plants. We already have much more than we need. Capacity in terms of professional competence, capacity in terms of commitment, in terms of integrity, in terms of resolute determination. And this all should be, every authority should be with accountability. And I will conclude with Einstein. This is the prerequisite. Nothing will work, I can assure you, and nothing has worked. Our energy problems have only complicated. Out of no circular debt, we are now in 2200 billion of circular debt. This is just one small example. We are only complicating the things. Why? He says we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Thank you very much for your time and patience. I apologize, I took a few minutes more than decided, but trust me, it is such a huge topic, I had to skip and dip. Okay, we have 15, हमारे पास 15 मिनट है क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर सेशन के लिए. मैं आपके सामने मौजूद हूँ. अनफॉर्चुनेटली सब्जेक्ट ऐसा था, टर्मिनोलॉजी ऐसी थी, और मैं पिछले 20 साल से पाकिस्तान से बाहर हूँ. मेरी सारे थॉट प्रोसेस सारा कुछ इंग्लिश में चलता है. तो by design or unintentionally it went into English. But the question answer I will try. इंशाल्लाह मैं आप बात कीजिए, मैं कोशिश करूँगा आपको जिसकी इंग्लिश में उर्दू में जैसे भी आप पूछना चाहें मैं आपको जवाब देने की कोशिश करूँगा. उसके अलावा ये मेरा ब्लॉग है, अभी इब्तदाई स्टेज में, पाकिस्तान एनर्जी एंड एनवायरमेंटल फोरम. मेरी कोशिश है कि इसको एक गो टू पॉइंट बनाया जाए कि हमारे इश्यूज के मतलब, स्टेट ऑफ अफेयर्स के मतलब, हमारे पॉलिसी एंड डिसीजन मेकर्स को, हमारे बिजनेस कम्युनिटी को, सिविल सोसाइटी को, स्टूडेंट्स को कैंडिड, अनबाइस्ड और प्रोफेशनल इंफॉर्मेशन और एजुकेशन मिल सके. Any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Bilal, I will request you to raise your question, please. Please unmute yourself as well. Mr. Bilal, over.
I can see 8 hands raised. जी बताइए, अनम्यूट कीजिए अपने आप को, बताइए. Do we have a facility to receive question in writing?
Assalamualaikum.
जी, अस्सलाम वरहमतुल्लाह. I really appreciate. जी. Actually, this is really very nice and very informative presentation from Dr. Asif. I really appreciate it, and it's eye-opening for us. Actually, I want to just ask what individually we can do to take over this crisis. Either we can do what minimum I think personally we can do. We can shift our house electricity or energy to the solar. Is this the solution? Is this make sense, or is it can make a little bit contribution from our side? Or is there anything we can do together to cater this problem? Thank you. This is my question.
Just tell me, where in the conscious world you have shops open after 6 p.m.? Only emergencies, basic provisionaries, and restaurants. You go to Pakistan in urban settings. In many cases, shops open at 3, 4, 5 p.m. and they go on to 2 p.m., 2 a.m. in the morning. And many governments in the past, they promised to control this issue, but they could not. There's just no concept of demand side management. And let me tell you, if we have a shortage of, let's say, 1 kilowatt hour in our system, you know, our power plants, at best, they have an efficiency of 30%, 35%. And if you consider, so it means if we have to, if we need 1 unit of electricity, we have to burn three units of fuel to produce that electricity. And if you also consider the transmission and distribution losses, which eat up about 30% of our generation, to have 1 unit of electricity, you need to burn at least 4 or 5 units of fuel. And if you are consuming 10 units, it is much easier, economic, and affordable to do housekeeping, to adjust yourself, to switch off the lights, to adjust the thermostat, to change the windows, than to have 5 units burned to give you that 1 unit. That's what we need to do at every level, at the household, at the industrial, commercial, at every level. And unfortunately, this we have not even regarded with a little bit of importance. And energy conservation is one of the 3 cornerstones of energy policies anywhere in the world. Even those societies where per capita electricity consumption is 15 times more than Pakistanis, they still have energy conservation as one of the fundamental national and individual priorities. So that's the starting point. And then you talked about solar PV. Well, we are in a mess. The IPPs that we installed in 1990s, we were not able to use them until 2005 because we overdid it. And we paid them heavily in terms of capacity payment. And we have not learned any lesson. We have repeated the same mistake. You know how much is our installed capacity? 38,000 megawatt. And what was the maximum peak load last summer? 24,000 megawatt. And in winter, these days, 8 or 9,000 megawatt. So what are we doing with 38,000 megawatt? A major chunk of it we are not going to use in foreseeable future. And now when we are going on to solar, as you said, everybody is going to, or everybody who can afford would be going for solar PV and wind power and hydropower. Who is going to buy electricity from those coal and oil and gas power plants? Who would need that? Nobody. But we are hand tied in the capacity payment. That's what President Alvi labeled as, that's what Khaja Asif labeled as hydrocarbon. So we are in a very difficult situation, unfortunately, for a foreseeable future, unless we revisit our power purchase agreements and try to find a way out.
Next question, Mr. Imran, please.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर द प्रेजेंटेशन. बहुत अच्छी तरह से आपने चीजें एक्सप्लेन की. इसमें मेरे 2 क्वेश्चंस हैं आपसे. क्वेश्चन नंबर 1 ये है कि ये जो सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी का टॉपिक है, इसमें हम लोग डैम्स की कंस्ट्रक्शन को कहाँ फिट कर रहे हैं और कितने टाइम में हम उससे फायदा हासिल करने में कामयाब हो जाएंगे, इस पर थोड़ी सी रोशनी डाल दें. और सेकेंडली ये कि हैविंग सेड दैट कि गवर्नमेंट्स जो हैं वो जितनी भी गुजरी हैं या जो मौजूदा हैं, उनकी उस तरह इसमें इम्पोर्टेंस इस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक को वो नहीं दे सके. क्या कोई ऐसे पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर ग्रुप्स या एस्टेब्लिशमेंट प्रेशर ग्रुप्स हैं जिनको यूज करते हुए एक लार्जर इम्पैक्ट के लिए हम लोग आगे बढ़ सकते हैं? यानी आपकी एफर्ट्स हम लोग देख रहे हैं, लेकिन उन एफर्ट्स को क्या प्रॉपर समझ लें बास्केट में डालने की जरूरत नहीं है? ये 2 क्वेश्चन है मेरे. थैंक यू.
जी शुक्रिया. आपका पहला सवाल था हाइड्रो पावर पे. देखिए, हाइड्रो पावर पाकिस्तान के लिए इट्स द मोस्ट सस्टेनेबल चॉइस एट द मोमेंट. कुछ साल पहले जब मैंने अपनी पहली किताब लिखी तो उस वक्त हमें हाइड्रो पावर प्रोजेक्ट्स जो है तरबेला 30 पैसे में यूनिट दे रहा था, और उस वक्त हम डबल फिगर्स में 10, 11, 12 रुपए में यूनिट खरीद रहे थे IPP से. हाइड्रो पावर की तरफ हम जाएंगे तो इंडिजिनस होगी, एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी होगी, इट्स रिलेटिवली एनवायरमेंटली फ्रेंडली एंड इट विल बी इकोनॉमिकल एंड इट विल बी ड्यूरेबल. और अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमने 1980s से 2015 probably 10 तक हमने हाइड्रो पावर में कुछ नहीं किया. एक गाजी ब्रो था, 1400 मेगावाट का हमने लगाया था रन ऑफ रिवर. अभी हमने कुछ हाइड्रो पावर के प्रोजेक्ट लगे हैं एंड दिस इज प्रोबब्ली द ओनली गुड साइन, प्रॉमिसिंग साइन दैट आई सी कि कुछ हाइड्रो पावर के प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं वो गवर्नमेंट ने इनिशिएट किए हैं विच आर एट वेरी अर्ली स्टेजेस. हाइड्रो पावर जो है इट इज एक्सट्रीमली साइट स्पेसिफिक. इसकी कॉस्ट कितनी होगी, इसका टाइम कितना होगा, ये साइट पे डिपेंड करेगा. बाज़ बड़ी इजी साइट होती हैं, जैसे कि कालाबाग में तो कहा जाता है कि आपको लेक बनाने की ज़रूरत ही नहीं, एक नेचुरल लेक मौजूद है. बाज़ जगह पे आपको लेक तक जो है वो बनानी पड़ती है, उसके बाद डैम और बाकी चीज़ें. तो ये प्रोजेक्ट जो है इसकी कॉस्ट जाएगी. लेकिन मेरा ख्याल है कि अगर हम हाइड्रो पावर की तरफ जा रहे हैं देर आइंद साइड, ये हमें करना चाहिए और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हमें हाइड्रो पावर की तरफ जाना चाहिए. अगला आपका सवाल था कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं अपने तई. देखिए, आज के ज़माने में बहुत से चैनल्स हैं टू मोबिलाइज, टू इन्फ्लुएंस. हमें सिविल सोसाइटी के तौर पे ऑर्गेनाइज होने की ज़रूरत है. वी आर ऑल पार्ट ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी and civil society can play a very, very important role where it wants. इंडिविजुअल के तौर पे अब तो हर बंदे के पास अपना एक मीडिया आउटलेट है एंड वी कैन रियली प्ले एन इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल. हमें सोसाइटी को एजुकेट करने की जरूरत है. बदकिस्मत से किसी भी गवर्नमेंट ने, अगर मेरे पास टाइम नहीं था कि मैं आपको हमारी सोसाइटी में जो एनर्जी की अवेयरनेस है कि उस पर बात कर सकता. हमें बहुत से महाजों पे काम करने की जरूरत है. हमें सिर्फ जो पॉलिसी एंड डिसीजन मेकर्स हैं उनको अप्रोच नहीं करना, ऑब्वियसली सबसे ज्यादा उन्हीं को, लेकिन हमें अपने आप को, अपनी सोसाइटी को भी एजुकेट करने की जरूरत है, अपने फेलो बीइंग्स को भी एजुकेट करने की जरूरत है. और यकीनन हम बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं. तब्दीली ऊपर हम कब तक इन्फ्लुएंस कर सकते हैं कुछ कहा नहीं जा सकता, लेकिन जो कुछ भी हम करेंगे डेफिनेटली इट विल हैव एन इम्पैक्ट. Thank you.
Mr. Mohammad Shami, you please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Muhammad Asif, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I'm a General Secretary of Institution of Engineers Pakistan here in Khubar, Saudi Arabia, and really surprised and shocked to see the data which you have provided regarding the energy crisis and the whole history and the background of the energy crisis in the country. My two observations, or one or two questions, in fact, as one of my colleagues said, how we can contribute. Is there any center of excellence for energy right now existing in Pakistan, and can we influence this to implement your suggestions as short term and medium and long term? There are so many questions coming in the mind because myself also giving a lot of presentation on smart grid, and my presentation also reached to even Shahid Khana Basi level. But anyhow, to cut short, is there a net metering should be encouraged for a small end user so that he can reduce his bill? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ji, for your question. As usual, these are all important questions, I must say. So you have asked about Center of Excellence and net metering. Okay. Now, Center of Excellence. I wish I had more time to reflect on the role of stakeholders. Academia, I wrote in 2007 in Dawn, when we were deep down in energy crisis. At that time, there was not a single energy department in any university in Pakistan. Not a single. I met the Minister for Science and Technology at that time, Dr. Tarhaman. He was very kind. He was fully convinced. But unfortunately, for some reasons which are beyond my and his control, things could not proceed. Right now, I've just briefly touched upon, we are chained by the circular debt, by the toxic power purchase agreements. And as of 2020, there's not a single university in Pakistan which is offering courses on energy marketing, energy economics, on the business and economic dimension of energy. Recently, I contacted a gentleman who had been at the highest policy-making position in the country very recently. And now he is heading a university. I propose him that this is a very, very important gap that we need to fill. And he simply wrote me back, we don't have people to start to do this initiative. He did not say there's no need for this initiative. He just said we don't have faculty. We don't have manpower to do that. Last year, I was on a visit, official visit to Pakistan, and I just happened to meet with another very resourceful gentleman in the present setup. We knew each other for about 10, 15 years, and we had a discussion on a few things. And there and then he invited me to join the Prime Minister's task force on science and technology with particular focus on energy. And he asked me to come on board. After some deliberation, I agreed. And he took it to the concerned circles, and he was told this position needs cabinet approval. And the situation in those days was there was some political kind of turmoil going on. So he said, let's wait on for a while. So I have always been ready to help in whatever capacity I can do to let Pakistani concerned authorities, irrespective of who is in the government, whether it is PMLN or PPP or it is PTI, we need to rise above these biases and affiliations when it comes to Pakistan's and society's issues. Your second question is about net metering. Well, there has been net metering initiated, I think, 3-4 years ago, but they came up initially with several threads. It has to be 3-phase, that this should be the minimum capacity, and so on and so forth. And as a matter of fact, and it is a global issue that the utility companies, they are discouraging renewable technologies for obvious reasons. It's not an issue in Pakistan. No, you tell me, we have 38,000 megawatts of contracts signed, obliged to pay them whether we buy anything from them or not. Then how can utilities appreciate people going on solar energy? It's a obvious conflict of interest, and we need to push for it. And things are moving positively, but slowly. Thank you.
Mr. Fuad, I request you to ask your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Ji, Dr. Saab, first of all, I would like to thank the way you have presented and give a detailed presentation on this important topic. It is the need of the hour. My question is, after watching your presentation, मेरा एक यही सवाल है कि देखिए, as an individual, it is our responsibility to conserve energy. Because in my point of view, it is better to save a megawatt rather than generate a megawatt, right? Right now, Pakistan is facing a huge energy crisis, and it's everyone's responsibility to practice energy conservation measures. Next is to move them towards energy efficient lifestyle by adopting energy efficient products, and third phase is to switch towards renewable side. So by adopting these points, we can definitely make a big change in the society, because it's an individual, it's everyone effort to, and it's an everyone responsibility to play an important role towards this social and noble cause. Thank you very much.
I totally agree with you, or as they say, I cannot agree more with you. All of us have to play a role. I wish I could show you the Kunda culture in Pakistan. And those people who are using Kunda, they're in our neighborhoods. They are our friends, our relatives. I'm saying our means generally in the society. And what are we doing against those lawless elements? And who is paying the price for them? You and me. That poor gentleman who died of heart attack when he saw his bills. The poor daughter of Habib Jalib. We are paying the price for those lawless elements. And gas, I've told you, the losses in the gas network have doubled. So we are not going uphill, we are going downhill in many areas. And yes, energy efficiency has to be the starting point. There's no point in going for renewable or other expensive projects if you cannot save energy. As I gave the analogy of 1 unit, if you need to burn 4 or 5 units of energy. The easiest solution recognized in the world and being practiced in the world is energy efficiency to handle energy crisis, to handle the demand and supply shortfalls, to increase your economic viability, to foster your national security. If you're consuming less, you're importing less. And you know, petroleum products, they are the lion's share in our import budget. Our whole imbalance in imports is because of the petroleum products. And if we are consuming less, we are importing less. We are more sovereign nation. We are more independent nation. And your next question, so I totally agree. Energy efficiency has to be the starting point. And let me assure you, this is the most neglected area in the country. The energy efficiency department, it has been made as they say, a shuttlecock between different ministries and departments. And it is just last year that they had their kind of constitution approved after a lot of efforts in the parliament. In 2019, and it was tabled in parliament probably in 2008 or 9. You imagine how many years it took for the constitution for energy efficiency. So this is the importance that we give it to as a society. And let me tell you, I come from a city of industry, and I know how industrialists are stealing electricity and gas. They're stealing in billions. One consumer, they are big industries. One consumer allegedly has stolen energy worth billions. And you will find few who pay the bill. And they are not doing that their own. Obviously, it is all in partnership with the utility staff. And who are they? They are my class fellows. They are your class fellows. They are my relatives. They are my neighbors. You need to engage. We need to engage morally. We need to engage socially. It's a huge effort that we have to make. And unfortunately, there's no realization at any level and on any front.
Next question, Mr. Abdul Rahman, please.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, सबसे पहले तो आप और मुंतज़मीन जो हैं वो मुबारकबाद के मुस्तहिक़ हैं कि आपने इस कदर अहम मसले को मौज़ू बहस बनाया। मेरी राय है कि इस तरह की एक और नशिस्त रखी जाए जिसमें मैक्रो और माइक्रो लेवल पे जिस तरह से एनर्जी बचाने के बारे में भाइयों ने बात की या आरा आपसे पूछी, इसी तरह से यूँ समझें जो सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी जो है उस पे एक तरह का कंसोर्शियम यूँ समझिए कि यहाँ पे जिस तरह से 700 इम्प्लीमेंटेड है और मखसूस प्रोडक्ट्स इंपोर्ट करने पे आपने यूँ समझिए कि उसको इंश्योर किया जाता है कि ख़ास किस्म की और अच्छी पाकिस्तान में बहुत से लोग सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी पे इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, सॉल्यूशंस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, मगर अनफॉर्चुनेटली उसमें भी वही फ्लॉ आ रहा है कि जनाब खामियां इतनी हैं कि आप कुछ काम करा लें और उसके बाद उसके ऊपर हमेशा डाउट्स रहते हैं। तो मैं ये चाहूँगा कि आप इस हवाले से आम आदमी को किस तरह से मोबिलाइज करना चाहेंगे कि वो किस तरह से सस्टेनेबल बेटर सॉल्यूशंस ऑफ सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी जो है उसको वो इंश्योर कर सके। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
जी शुक्रिया, आपका भी सवाल अहम है एज यूजुअल। और क्वालिटी ऑफ energy components and equipment is a real issue. और मेरे concern started with the Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park. और उसके बाद मैंने आपको दिखाया कि जो स्ट्रीट लाइट के प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं और मैं आपको गिनवा सकता हूँ बेशुमार। यकीनन आप सोलर एनर्जी की सेल्स की बात करते हैं, वी हैव ए $1 billion industry of UPS and generator imports, and look at their quality. क्या वो किसी इंटरनेशनल बेंचमार्क पे वो पूरे उतरते हैं? And we are importing कुछ साल पहले मैं देख रहा था अपने किसी एक बुक चैप्टर के लिए, उस साल में हम लोग $2 billion से ज्यादा के इंपोर्ट थे जनरेटर और UPS। अब हर घर का वो हिस्सा है और उनकी क्वालिटी हम सबके सामने है। यकीनन सोलर एनर्जी पैनल्स के अंदर, इन्वर्टर्स के अंदर, बैटरीज के अंदर, चार्ज कंट्रोलर्स के अंदर देयर आर सीरियस कैपेसिटी इश्यूज। और उससे भी ज़्यादा बढ़ के इंस्टॉलर्स जो हैं, डिज़ाइनर्स जो हैं, हाउ मेनी ऑफ देम आर क्वालिफाइड। एक बड़ी अच्छी बात हुई कि अल्टरनेट एनर्जी डेवलपमेंट बोर्ड ने, जिसका मैं नाकिद रहा हूँ और मैंने अपनी किताब में بہت زیادہ اس پہ تنقید کی, بہت زیادہ میں نے لکھا ہے, کیونکہ میں ان کو 2002 سے جانتا تھا. I used to interact with the top management. I used to assist them whenever they needed my help in certain areas. اور جو انہوں نے اس وقت بلنڈرز کیے, مثلا جو ان کو ٹارگٹ دیا گیا تھا وہ یہ تھا کہ 2007 تک انہوں نے 700 میگا واٹ کے ونڈ پاور پروجیکٹس لگانے تھے, اور 2008 تک اٹ واز 0. 2009 میں 6 میگا واٹ کی ونڈ ٹربائنز لگی تھی, اور وہ بھی صرف فوٹو شوٹ کے لیے. There were flashes, photographs, news items, and that's it. لیکن مجھے بڑی خوشی ہوئی کہ پچھلے سال مجھے ADB وزٹ کرنے کا موقع ملا, اور انہوں نے انسٹالرز کے لیے اکریڈیٹیشن کورسز جو ہیں وہ شروع کیے تھے, ایک بڑی اچھی جرمنی کی کمپنی ہے اس کے ساتھ. اور جو صاحب اس وقت ہیں وہاں پہ پوزیشن پہ, he is a very good contact of mine. I consider him a sincere gentleman. اور میں آپ کو ایک بات بتاؤں, I have been critique about a few things, لیکن we have absolutely brilliant, competent and people, professionals who have highest integrity and honesty in the system, but they are few and they are marginalized when it comes to critical policy and decision making. So the gentleman I'm talking about is, I regard him a person of integrity, financial integrity and initiative. تو مجھے خوشی ہوئی کہ انہوں نے کچھ انیشیٹوز ہیں وہ شروع کیے ہیں. تو یقیناً کوالٹی ایشوز آر دیئر, اور اس ایریا میں بہت زیادہ کام کرنے کی ضرورت ہے. ریگولیشن کی ضرورت ہے, اسٹینڈرڈائزیشن کی ضرورت ہے, صرف اکوپمنٹ اور ٹیکنالوجیز میں نہیں بلکہ ان کی آگے انسٹالیشنز میں. آپ مرسڈیز, آپ کے پاس مرسڈیز ہیں یا پورشے ہے, جو بھی گاڑی آپ پسند کرتے ہیں, اس میں کوئی اکوپمنٹ خراب ہو جائے تو اسے آپ کوشش کریں گے کہ آپ وہیں سے منگائیں اوریجنل. تو وہاں سے منگا کے آپ کہیں پہ تکبہ میں نہیں جا سکتے. Would you go to تکبہ؟ اگر آپ لوکل ہیں تو میں آپ سے پوچھ سکتا ہوں کہ آپ کسی میکینک کے پاس لے جائیں گے؟ نہیں. اس کی انسٹالیشن بھی اتنی ہی اہم ہے جتنی کوالٹی آف اکوپمنٹ کی. تو اور آپ کو میں ایک بات بتاؤں کہ اگر آپ ویسٹ میں ہیں, ان یورپ, ان امریکہ, تو انسٹالیشن کاسٹ جو ہے وہ پروجیکٹ کی سب سے بڑا سنگل انڈیویجول کمپوننٹ از انسٹالیشن کاسٹ, because it has to be done through competent, qualified, accredited people, not by every Tom, Dick and Harry. اور پاکستان میں تو دودھ والوں نے بھی سولر پینل بیچنے شروع کیے ہوئے ہیں. So obviously we need to regulate, we need to standardize. Obviously it's good to see solar panels going into gourds and villages and so on, لیکن اس کے ساتھ پھر کوالٹی ایشوز بھی ہیں کہ جن پہ کام کرنے کی ضرورت ہے.
Mr. Asim Qureshi, I would ask you to please ask the last question for the session today.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, I think it was a wonderful talk to watch by Dr. Asif. So there are a couple of quick questions. So as you mentioned, actually 29% of hydroelectricity is being produced. But if you see Switzerland, which is number one in the world, so they produce only 44% of hydro. I think maybe these calculations are based on the peak hours, because in winter months, as I know, it's going much, the performance of hydroelectricity, HEP is much down compared to the summer months. So this is one question. So how you see? The other question is that, you also mentioned wonderfully about the distribution. So as I remember, the surface distribution, there is a loss in surface distribution is almost 60%, 55 to 60%. So if there is a subsurface distribution, maybe this will recover. And the third thing, I didn't see much about this secondary batteries actually, which is going to be a future. So I'm sure if some companies will come forward and they will have, the industry and manufacturing units, not research, manufacturing of secondary batteries, and definitely, something will be done. And also, as you mentioned, maybe now solar power, according to the Chinese, is much, the as you are much aware of this, the prices are much down now. But as you mentioned, the site selection and how you well manage the project is a very important. Can you have some light on these quick points?
Well, thank you very much. And to begin with, for taking the liberty to ask 4 questions. Okay, first one is hydropower. Yes, hydropower, like other renewables, is seasonal. And that's actually the biggest drawback of renewables. They are intermittent. The consistency is an issue. Yes, Switzerland, Austria. I have been frequent visitor to Australia for teaching. Norway produces 99% of its electricity from hydropower in summer. And even it exports to neighboring countries. And what happens when it goes down in winter? Through the local grids, regional grids, international grids, they get wind power from Denmark and so on. So in the renewable age, you need diversity. And Pakistan, for example, has hydropower, has solar energy, has wind power. And these 3 resources, they are good enough to give us a fair bit of stability to the grid. As they say in English, security lies in diversity. And we have to go for diverse solutions. Batteries. Yes, batteries has been the highlight of the scientific and engineering advancements in the field of energy in the last decade. I remember in 2017, I saw in an exhibition in Munich, Mercedes were saying their dream is to go for 100 megawatt of battery bank in future. And only few weeks later, Tesla came up with 100 megawatt of battery bank in Australia. And now in USA, they are building, I think if I'm not mistaken, over 2,000 megawatt of battery bank. So batteries have really, they have been wonderful in last 4 or 5 years. And it is going to be not $1 billion industry, it's going to be $1 trillion industry. And already every household in Pakistan has batteries thanks to load shedding and UPS. And they are substandard batteries. Low depth of discharge, low life, hardly goes beyond a couple of years. And we do need to go for batteries which are deep cycle, which are durable, and which have a better return on investment and high efficiency. Transmission and distribution losses, they basically come in 2 types. They are technical losses, which we cannot avoid. They are by the laws of science, and typically they should not be more than 6 to 7%. And anything above, okay, in Pakistan, we give leverage of 2 to 3% because of our aged system. It's not very new. So instead of maybe 6%, we can say, okay, 8%. And actually, in Islamabad, there had been cases where our losses were in single digit. But anything above that, you know where it is going. Thank you.
I think we have just one last question from Mr. Saeed Jadoon. Please.
जी, Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much. Dr. Saeed Jadoon बोल रहा हूँ इस्लामाबाद से. I have no question. It is a wonderful presentation. मैं just clarification करता हूँ. किसी ने question किया था कि center of excellency पाकिस्तान में energy कहाँ है? तो 2 जगह पे ना energy कराई जा रही है. Energy management engineering जो है वो नस्ब में कराई जा रही है और center of excellence अभी establish हुआ है लम्स के अंदर, जिसको डॉक्टर फयाज चौधरी लीड कर रहे हैं लम्स में. तो 2 जगह पे ना एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट के बारे में और एनर्जी की रिसोर्स के बारे में पढ़ाया जा रहा है. जस्ट दिस इज क्लैरिफिकेशन.
जी डॉक्टर साहब, बहुत शुक्रिया. जैसे मैंने बात की कि 2007 तक तो बिल्कुल पतली हालत थी एनर्जी की एजुकेशन के हवाले से, और अभी आपने 2 का हवाला दिया. यकीनन बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है कुछ एरियाज में. USAID के ताउन से नस्ल में सेंटर ऑफ एक्सीलेंस बना था एनर्जी के लिए एक नस्ल में, एक यूटी पिशावर में, और उसके बाद जामशोर में बना था मेनली वाटर एंड टू सर्टेन एक्सटेंट एनर्जी, एंड देयर वर ह्यूज इन्वेस्टमेंट बाय पाकिस्तानी स्टैंडर्ड. There were tens of millions of dollars gone into. अब उनकी sustainability when the funding has dried out, we are not really sure. I hope it is not the case of those solar street lights which I have shown you. आपने लम्स की बात की, लम्स में बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है. डॉक्टर नुमान भी हैं इलेक्ट्रिकल में, अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं. बाकी आप लोग आपने बताया यूईटी लाहौर में अच्छा काम, वो भी एनर्जी मैनेजमेंट में काम शुरू किया. We need to bridge the gap from the classrooms. It has to be taken to the field. और इसमें एकेडेमिया को रोल प्ले करना है और इंडस्ट्री को भी आना है. It's not a one-way traffic. Everybody has to come together. मैंने 15 साल मुझे मौका मिला यूरोप में पढ़ाने का, रिसर्च करने का, इंटरेक्ट करने का. आप किसी भी मुल्क में चले जाएं, एडवांस जो बेल्ट है, आपको उनके जो हेड्स ऑफ स्टेट हैं, उनकी जो कैबिनेट है, उनके अंदर आपको एडवाइजर्स मिलेंगे वहाँ की लीडिंग यूनिवर्सिटीज से, ऑक्सफोर्ड से, कैम्ब्रिज से, इंपीरियल से. अभी आप देखिए कोविड के इशू पे रिसर्च कहाँ की साइट हो रही है? इंपीरियल की. अगर आप यूएस में, आपको हार्वर्ड, एमआईटी, बर्कले के एडवाइजर्स मिलेंगे व्हाइट हाउस में. यहाँ पे एक साहब तशरीफ लाए पाकिस्तान से, रेक्टर थे, वन ऑफ द मोस्ट प्रीमियर एंड प्रोबब्ली द मोस्ट पावरफुल यूनिवर्सिटी इन द कंट्री, उसके रेक्टर थे. तो शाम को कार्बन कंपाउंड में, मेरे ऑडियंस में से काफी लोग वाकिफ होंगे, शाम को एक नशिस्त थी, उन्होंने अपनी बात रखी, उसके बाद क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन था. मैंने उनसे पूछा, Mr. Rector, you are sitting in Islamabad, in the federal capital, and you have tentacles everywhere. He laughed, he smiled. I said, you know what I'm talking about. Now, what were you doing and what was university doing when Sahiwal coal project was being built? To say the least, environmentally, it's a criminal, it's a crime. I'm not going into the financial allegations and so on. Let's just focus on the environmental issue. It's a crime to do a imported coal power project. The coal travels all the way from the seaport, 1,000 kilometers, to the most fertile, one of the most fertile pieces of land in the country. And coal, imagine the coal particles. And then I said, where was your institution when Qaid-e-Azam Solar Park was being built? Where were your academics? Where was your center of excellence? Where were your... And I have a lot of respect for my fellow academia in Pakistan. They are wonderful people, gem of experts. But why I had to write the book while sitting in Glasgow on energy crisis of Pakistan in 2009, 10, 11. And you can imagine the problems I had to access even the basic data. It was a job of people sitting in Islamabad, in Lahore, in Karachi, to do that academic work. So I hope that our academics, I have a lot of respect for them, and I hope that they rise to the challenge. It's a multi-dimensional challenge, complicated challenge. They have started to do a good job, and I hope that it is reciprocated by other people, by other stakeholders, especially industry and policy industry. I would love to see people from top universities advising the ministers, advising our heads of state. If that was the case, can you think that the gentleman running car on water would have reached where he did? But unfortunately, some academic and professional bodies, they endorsed him. And there it comes to the issue of integrity and capacity. Thank you very much. So, respected audience, it has been a pleasure to engage with you and to share my understanding and experiences with you. And I have to admit the time, the scope of the topic did not allow me to go into the technical details or on the business avenues or the economic dimensions of the things, because the idea was to give a bird's eye view of the whole issue. If there are any other opportunities in future to interact, I will be pleased to do that. And in the meanwhile, please feel free to visit Pakistan Energy and Environmental Forum, which is at its earlier stages of revamping. And I hope that it becomes the go-to point for awareness on many of these issues. Thank you very much for your patience and time. And once again, apologies for taking about 10 minutes more than the allocated time in my presentation. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mohammad Asif Saab, for your valuable input tonight. Thank you once again, sir. मैं इंतहाई माजरत ख्वाह हूँ कि अभी मजीद भी कुछ क्वेश्चन थे, हम उनको नहीं ले सके। अहमद सुहेल साहब थे, क्वेश्चन पूछना चाह रहे थे, आफ्ताब अयूब साहब, माजिद जंजुआ साहब क्वेश्चन करना चाह रहे थे। हम इंतहाई माजरत ख्वाह हैं कि वक्त की कमी के बायस हम क्वेश्चन नहीं ले सके, but you can contact us on our Twitter account and Facebook page, और हम इंशाल्लाह डॉक्टर साहब आपको उस पे जवाब देंगे इंशाल्लाह। Once again, on the behalf of Pakistan Forum, I would like, I'm thankful to all participants for your precious time for the sake of our national issue, energy crisis in our beloved country. और आखिर में ज़रूर ये कहना चाहूँगा कि यकीनन चैलेंजेस बहुत ज़्यादा है, क्राइसिस भी है, मगर इस उम्मीद के साथ कि इंशाल्लाह हमारा मुस्तकबिल में अंधेरा नहीं है, उजाला है। इंशाल्लाह हमारा मुस्तकबिल रोशन होगा। पाकिस्तान पाइंदाबाद।